They love you in silence. The age difference stopped them. God is about to reveal everything. Prepare yourself. Flushed face. You felt this long before anyone ever said it out loud. Not as a thought, not as a fantasy, but as a quiet knowing that stayed with you even when you tried to ignore it. There has always been a presence around this connection that didn't behave like ordinary attraction. It didn't rush. It didn't demand. It didn't try to prove itself. It stayed still. It watched. It waited. And somewhere deep inside, you understood that what was being held back wasn't confusion, it was restraint. The kind of restraint that comes from caring too deeply to risk doing harm. They didn't stay silent because they felt nothing. They stayed silent because they felt everything. The age difference was never just about numbers. You already know that. It became a symbol for timing, responsibility, fear, and the weight of consequences. It was the easy explanation people could point to without having to look at what was really happening underneath. But you felt the truth in the pauses. In the moments where words almost surfaced and then disappeared. In the way their energy shifted when you were near, not dramatic, not obvious, just subtly altered, like someone holding their breath without realizing it. This wasn't someone unsure of their feelings. This was someone very aware of them, and equally aware of what those feelings could disrupt if released too soon. You may have questioned yourself at times, wondering if you imagined the depth, if you projected meaning where there was none. But projection doesn't feel like this. Projection doesn't come with consistency, with patterns that repeat quietly over time. Projection doesn't linger when you stop feeding it. What you sensed remained even when you tried to move on, even when you told yourself it was better to let go. That's because silence doesn't erase truth. It only delays its expression. There was a reason they never crossed certain lines. A reason they pulled back right when something real could have been said. They were protecting something, and it wasn't their pride. It was you. It was the fragile balance of timing, roles, and life circumstances that made the connection feel both undeniable and impossible at the same time. They knew that once spoken, the truth would change everything. And they weren't ready to be the one who caused that shift before it was safe for either of you. You were not meant to chase this. You were not meant to demand answers. The silence itself was part of the message. It asked you to grow into a version of yourself that no longer needed reassurance to trust what you feel. It asked you to sit with uncertainty without collapsing into self-doubt. And you did. Quietly. Painfully at times. But you did. And that growth is not unnoticed. It is the very reason things are beginning to move now. What's changing isn't just external circumstances. It's internal readiness. On both sides. The age difference that once felt like a wall has already started to lose its power. Not because time magically fixed everything, but because understanding matured. Perspectives shifted. Fear softened. What once felt risky now feels inevitable. Not in a dramatic way. In a grounded way. In the way truth eventually rises when it's no longer being suppressed by fear. You may notice signs that feel subtle but significant. A change in how they look at you. A lingering moment that lasts a second longer than it used to. A conversation that almost goes deeper before stopping, not out of avoidance, but out of careful timing. These aren't accidents. They are rehearsals for honesty. Small openings that test whether the space is finally safe enough to hold what's been hidden. God revealing everything doesn't always look like a sudden confession or a dramatic scene. Sometimes revelation is quieter. Sometimes it's a series of realizations that line up so clearly you can no longer pretend you didn't see them. Sometimes it's a situation that removes excuses without forcing words. And sometimes it's simply the inner shift where silence stops feeling protective and starts feeling heavy. That's when truth begins to press forward on its own. Prepare yourself doesn't mean brace for chaos. It means prepare for clarity. Clarity can be unsettling when you've lived in ambiguity for so long. It removes the comfort of maybe and replaces it with now you know. Knowing changes how you stand, how you choose, how you respect yourself. You won't be able to unknow what's about to surface, and that's not something to fear. It's something to meet with steadiness. This revelation will not ask you to shrink or rush. It will not demand that you abandon your values or compromise your growth. If anything, it will confirm how much you've already evolved. You're no longer the person who waits to be chosen in silence. You're the person who understands that being seen fully requires both people to be ready, not just willing. They love you in silence because at one point, silence was the most honest option they had. But silence is not meant to be permanent. It's meant to be a bridge. A pause. A space where both souls can align with truth without fear controlling the outcome. That pause has done its work. The weight of what's unspoken is heavier now than the risk of speaking it. When the truth comes, it won't arrive to destabilize you. It will arrive to settle something that has been unresolved for too long. You may feel a strange calm when it happens, like something finally clicked into place. That's how you'll know this was never about fantasy or longing. It was about timing, growth, and the courage to meet reality without hiding. Whatever is revealed will not diminish you. It will not take your power. It will return it. Because silence taught you self-trust. It taught you patience without self-abandonment. It taught you how to feel deeply without losing yourself. And those lessons remain, regardless of how the story unfolds. You don't need to force anything now. You don't need to prepare speeches or imagine outcomes. Preparation, in this sense, is simply staying grounded. Staying honest with yourself. Letting the truth come without gripping it too tightly. You've already done the hardest part by staying open without losing your center. This was never about age. It was about readiness. And readiness has arrived quietly, the same way love lived between you for so long. In silence, they may not say it immediately. Not because they don't want to, but because when silence has been a language for so long, speech feels exposed. You'll sense this hesitation not as distance, but as gravity. As if something important is gathering weight before it steps into the open. This is where many people misread the moment. They think hesitation means doubt. But this kind of hesitation comes from care. From knowing that once truth is spoken, it cannot be folded back into silence again. And they are no longer deciding whether they feel it. They are deciding whether they are ready to stand inside it without hiding. You've already noticed how the energy between you has changed. The quiet is different now. It doesn't feel empty. It feels charged. Like a room just before someone speaks the sentence that shifts everything. Even when nothing is said, you feel more seen than before. More acknowledged. That's because silence can only hold truth for so long before it begins to reveal itself through behavior, through presence, through the inability to remain neutral. Neutrality is impossible when love has matured past denial. There were times when you thought distance meant safety. When you believed pulling back would protect you from disappointment. And maybe for a while, it did. But distance also sharpened awareness. It stripped away illusions. It showed you that what remained wasn't attachment or longing, but recognition. Recognition doesn't fade with space. It doesn't weaken with logic. It simply waits until both people can meet it without fear dictating the terms. They have been watching you change. Not dramatically. Quietly. They've noticed how you no longer over-explain yourself. How you don't reach for reassurance the way you once did. How your presence feels steadier, more grounded, less willing to shrink. This shift matters more than you realize. It signals that you are no longer asking to be chosen. You are allowing truth to choose you. And that changes the dynamic completely. The age difference that once felt like a reason to stay silent has become less powerful because something else grew stronger. Respect. Emotional maturity. Understanding. What once felt like imbalance now feels like complement. Not because time erased the difference, but because growth reframed it. They no longer see you as someone fragile who needs protection from truth. They see you as someone capable of holding it. God's role in this isn't about forcing a confession or orchestrating drama. It's about removing the internal barriers that kept honesty locked away. When fear loosens its grip, truth doesn't need permission anymore. It simply emerges. Sometimes through words. Sometimes through actions that leave no room for doubt. Sometimes through circumstances that make silence impossible to maintain without feeling dishonest. You may find yourself at a crossroads where clarity demands a response from you as well. Not a reaction. A response. There's a difference. Reaction is driven by emotion. Response is driven by alignment. This is where your growth becomes essential. You're not being asked to abandon your boundaries or rush into certainty. You're being asked to stay present without reverting to old patterns of self-abandonment. There is no rush here. What's unfolding is precise. It's measured. It's intentional. Rushed truth often collapses under pressure. Grounded truth stands. And what's coming is meant to stand. Not just for a moment, but as a foundation for something that can exist without secrecy. You might feel moments of vulnerability surface unexpectedly. Old fears whispering that things could go wrong, that clarity could hurt more than ambiguity ever did. That's normal. Ambiguity feels safer because it asks nothing of you. Clarity asks you to choose how you stand in your own worth. It asks you to trust yourself enough to face whatever is revealed without losing your center. Remember this. Whatever comes to light is not a test of your value. It's a reflection of readiness. Their silence was never a rejection of you. It was a negotiation with fear, timing, and responsibility. And that negotiation is reaching its conclusion. You may notice that when they finally speak, it won't sound dramatic. It won't feel rehearsed. It may even sound simpler than you expected. Truth often does. It doesn't need embellishment. It carries weight on its own. And you'll recognize it immediately, not because of what is said, but because of how your body responds. Calm. Grounded. A quiet yes that doesn't need validation. This doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It means everything becomes honest. Honest connections still require care, communication, and boundaries. But they no longer require pretending. They no longer require silence to maintain stability. They are built on mutual recognition, not restraint. If there is one thing to hold on to as this unfolds, it's this. You don't need to prepare by hardening yourself. You prepare by staying open without losing discernment. By listening without abandoning your truth. By allowing clarity to arrive without rushing to control it. You were never meant to force this story forward. You were meant to grow into someone who could receive it without distortion. That's what you've been doing all along, even when it felt like nothing was happening. Something was. Inside you. Inside them. In the unseen space where timing matures. Love that begins in silence often speaks with more intention when it finally finds its voice. Not because it waited too long, but because it waited until it could be true without harm. And when it speaks, it doesn't ask you to prove your worth. It meets you where you already stand. Stay grounded. Stay present. Let what's coming come without gripping it. Silence has done its work. Now clarity is ready to do hers. There will be a moment when you realize that waiting no longer feels heavy. Not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer carrying the weight alone. Something shifts internally first. A loosening. A quiet confidence that whatever is revealed, you will not abandon yourself to receive it. This is important. Because love that arrives after silence does not come to rescue you. It comes to meet you. And you are finally standing where you can be met without losing your footing. They have replayed countless moments in their mind. Small interactions you may have forgotten. A look. A pause. A sentence that meant more than it appeared to. Silence gave them time to understand what those moments were actually pointing to. It gave them time to separate impulse from truth. What remained was not fleeting attraction or curiosity. What remained was steadiness. And steadiness is what makes revelation possible without regret. You might notice how their presence around you feels different now. Less guarded. Less performative. There is a softness that wasn't there before, paired with a seriousness that feels grounded rather than tense. This is not confusion. This is alignment settling into place. When someone stops running from what they feel, their energy stops scattering. It gathers. And you can feel that gathering even before words catch up. There were reasons this connection couldn't move forward before that had nothing to do with you. Responsibilities they weren't ready to rearrange. Identities they were still trying to protect. Fear of judgment, fear of disruption, fear of making a mistake they couldn't undo. Silence felt safer than honesty because honesty felt like a commitment they didn't yet trust themselves to hold with integrity. That has changed. Not overnight. Through reflection. Through internal reckoning. Through recognizing that avoiding truth carries its own cost. You were not wrong to feel the tension between closeness and restraint. That tension was real. It was the friction between love and fear existing in the same space. Most people choose fear and call it practicality. They choose silence and call it maturity. But true maturity eventually demands truth. Not impulsively. Responsibly. That's the stage you are approaching now. As this unfolds, you may find yourself less reactive than you expected. Less overwhelmed. More observant. That's because you are no longer operating from longing. You are operating from clarity. Longing pulls. Clarity stands. And standing allows you to see the full picture, not just the parts that feed desire or fear. There is also something important for you to understand. Revelation does not guarantee a specific outcome. It guarantees authenticity. And authenticity is what creates peace, regardless of what form the connection ultimately takes. You are not being led into uncertainty. You are being led out of illusion. That is always a stabilizing process, even when emotions are involved. If words come, listen to what is said and what is not said. Not to analyze. To feel alignment. Truth resonates quietly. It doesn't convince. It doesn't pressure. It doesn't rush you to decide. It allows space. And you are allowed to take that space. Silence once served a purpose. Now discernment does. You may feel moments where the past resurfaces. Old questions. Old doubts. That doesn't mean you're regressing. It means your system is integrating new information with old experiences. Let that integration happen without judgment. You don't need to resolve everything immediately. Integration takes time, and time is no longer your enemy here. What's remarkable about this connection is that it taught you how to hold love without possession. How to care without control. How to feel deeply without collapsing into expectation. These are not small lessons. They changed you at a foundational level. And because of that, whatever unfolds next will not repeat old dynamics. It cannot. You are not the same person who entered this silence. Neither are they. There may be external circumstances that shift to support this revelation. Conversations that open paths. Situations that remove barriers. Or simply a moment where silence feels more dishonest than speaking. These shifts are not coincidences. They are alignment catching up with internal readiness. You don't need to anticipate how it will happen. Anticipation creates tension. Presence creates stability. Stay present. Stay anchored in yourself. Let the truth arrive in its own way. When it does, you will not feel swept away. You will feel grounded enough to meet it without fear dictating your response. This is where trust becomes essential. Not blind trust in another person. Trust in yourself. Trust that you can handle clarity. Trust that you can hold love without losing discernment. Trust that you can choose yourself even while opening to connection. That trust is what silence was building in you all along. If love is acknowledged, it will not ask you to step backward into who you were. It will ask you to stand as who you are now. Whole. Aware. Self-respecting. That is the only kind of love worth revealing. And if the revelation comes in a form different than you expected, you will still be okay. Because clarity, even when it redirects, frees energy that was bound in uncertainty. It returns focus to your life. Your path. Your growth. Silence once held possibility. Clarity will release it. You are not on the edge of loss. You are on the edge of honesty. And honesty, when it arrives at the right time, does not break what is real. It strengthens it or clears it. Both outcomes are acts of alignment. Stay steady. Stay open. Let what has been hidden come forward without fear. The season of silence has fulfilled its purpose. What comes next is not chaos. It is truth finding its voice in a space that is finally ready to hold it. There is a subtle strength that begins to rise in you now, and it doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up as steadiness. As the absence of panic where panic once lived. As the quiet understanding that whatever unfolds, you are no longer standing on unstable ground. This is not indifference. This is self-trust. And it changes everything about how truth is received. They can feel this shift too. Even if they don't name it consciously, they sense that you are no longer waiting in the same way. Not leaning forward. Not holding your breath. You are present without expectation, open without reaching. That kind of presence is disarming. It removes pressure. It makes honesty feel possible where it once felt dangerous. Silence taught both of you different lessons. For you, it taught patience without self-erasure. For them, it taught the cost of restraint. They learned that holding back truth doesn't preserve connection forever. It suspends it. And suspension eventually demands resolution. You cannot hover indefinitely without losing balance. They know this now. There may be moments where you feel the urge to fill the silence yourself. To say something first. To relieve the tension. Resist that impulse gently. Not out of strategy, but out of respect for your own growth. You no longer need to manage outcomes. You no longer need to rescue clarity. Clarity is coming because it is ready, not because you force it. When truth finally steps forward, it may arrive wrapped in vulnerability rather than certainty. Don't confuse vulnerability with weakness. Vulnerability is the doorway honesty walks through when pride has loosened its grip. If you hear hesitation, hear it as courage finding its footing. This is not someone unsure of their feelings. This is someone learning to stand inside them without armor. You may also notice how your own response surprises you. Less emotional surge. Less internal chaos. More listening. More discernment. This doesn't mean the connection matters less. It means you matter more to yourself. And that creates a healthier space for anything real to exist. The age difference that once felt like a defining obstacle now feels contextual rather than central. It exists, but it no longer defines the narrative. Growth has reframed it. Understanding has softened it. Respect has integrated it. When people mature emotionally, numbers lose their power to intimidate. What remains is compatibility of values, presence, and readiness. There is a sacredness to timing that cannot be rushed without consequence. You both honored that timing in the only way you knew how at the time. Through restraint. Through silence. Through distance that protected rather than punished. That doesn't invalidate the pain of waiting. It gives it meaning. If there is grief that surfaces now for the time spent in uncertainty, allow it. Grief doesn't mean regret. It means acknowledgement. You are allowed to mourn what could not happen sooner while still honoring what is becoming possible now. Both can coexist without canceling each other out. You are not being asked to forget the silence. You are being asked to integrate it. To recognize that it shaped you into someone capable of holding truth without losing yourself. That is not accidental. That is preparation. There is a dignity in how this unfolds. No chasing. No dramatic reveals. No collapse into fantasy. Just two people meeting reality with clearer eyes than before. That dignity matters. It sets the tone for whatever comes next. If love is spoken, it will not demand immediate answers from you. It will allow space. If commitment is acknowledged, it will come with respect for your autonomy. If boundaries are named, they will be grounded rather than defensive. These are signs of maturity, not hesitation. And if the revelation is simply mutual recognition without immediate action, that too has value. Recognition heals something deep. It validates what you felt without requiring you to give anything up. Sometimes being seen is the closure. Sometimes it is the opening. You will know which it is by how it lands in your body. You have learned not to romanticize potential at the expense of reality. That lesson will protect you now. You will not step forward blindly. You will step forward consciously, or you will choose not to step forward at all. Both are acts of self-respect. There is no failure here. No missed destiny. No punishment for timing that didn't align sooner. There is only evolution. Two people arriving at a point where truth no longer threatens identity. Where honesty feels like relief rather than risk. Whatever is revealed will not ask you to become smaller. It will not ask you to silence yourself. It will not ask you to accept crumbs where you deserve presents. You have outgrown those dynamics. Silence refined you, but it no longer defines you. You may feel gratitude for that silence now in ways you couldn't before. Not because it was easy, but because it taught you how to stand alone without hardening your heart. That balance is rare. And it is the reason you are ready for clarity without losing softness. Stay with yourself as this unfolds. Stay connected to your breath. Your body. Your intuition. Let your responses come from alignment rather than fear or hope. You don't need to predict outcomes to be prepared. You need to remain present. The truth that arrives now does not arrive to disrupt your life. It arrives to align it. Alignment sometimes looks like union. Sometimes like release. Both are acts of love when they are honest. Silence was never the end of this story. It was the threshold. And you crossed it not by force, but by becoming someone who could walk forward without leaving themselves behind. As you move deeper into this phase, you begin to notice how differently you inhabit your own life. The waiting no longer defines your days. It doesn't sit in your chest the way it once did. Instead, there is space. Space to breathe. Space to observe. Space to let things arrive without immediately attaching your sense of worth to the outcome. This is not detachment. It is grounding. And grounding is what allows truth to land without destabilizing you. They feel this shift even if they cannot articulate it. When someone stops orbiting uncertainty, the entire dynamic changes. You are no longer signaling need. You are signaling presence. And presence invites honesty in a way need never could. It removes the fear of responsibility being forced. It creates an environment where truth can be spoken freely, without the pressure of having to immediately resolve everything it touches. There were moments in the past where silence felt confusing because it carried mixed signals. Care without clarity. Attention without declaration. Those mixed signals no longer exist in the same way because you are no longer interpreting them through longing. You are interpreting them through discernment. Discernment notices consistency. It notices congruence between words and actions. It notices when energy aligns with intention. And that awareness protects you now. If they come forward, it will not be with grand gestures. It will be with honesty that feels almost understated. Because when something has been held carefully for a long time, it doesn't explode outward. It opens slowly. Respectfully. You may even notice that the words themselves matter less than the tone. The steadiness. The willingness to be seen without guarantees. And you will not rush to fill the space with reassurance. You will allow silence to exist alongside truth without panic. This is important. Silence used to be a place of uncertainty. Now it becomes a place of integration. A pause where both of you can feel what has been acknowledged without rushing to define it prematurely. There is something deeply stabilizing about realizing you don't need to be chosen to feel whole. That realization changes how you receive love. It removes the edge. It removes the hunger. It allows connection to exist without urgency. And urgency is often what distorts truth into fantasy. You are no longer operating from urgency. You are operating from clarity. The age difference, which once felt like a defining feature of the story, now recedes into the background. It becomes one factor among many, rather than the lens through which everything is filtered. Emotional maturity has a way of doing that. It reorganizes priorities. It clarifies what truly matters. And what matters now is not perception or fear of judgment, but alignment and integrity. You may find yourself revisiting old memories with new eyes. Not to relive them, but to understand them. Moments that once felt confusing now make sense. Not because you have answers, but because you have context. Context brings compassion. For yourself. For them. For the timing that shaped everything. If at any point you feel uncertainty resurface, do not interpret it as a sign to retreat. Uncertainty is natural when new information integrates with old emotional experiences. Let it move through you without assigning meaning too quickly. You are not required to decide anything in the first moments of clarity. You are allowed to feel. To process. To remain grounded in yourself while the picture becomes clearer. There is a quiet dignity in how you are handling this now. No dramatic inner narratives. No spiraling. No self-bargaining. Just presence. That dignity is felt. It communicates self-respect without needing to be declared. And self-respect invites respect in return. You may also notice how your intuition feels sharper. Not louder. Clearer. Less emotional noise. More subtle knowing. Trust that. Intuition refined through silence is different from intuition driven by desire. It is steadier. Less reactive. More reliable. Let it guide your pace. Whatever unfolds next will ask you to remain honest with yourself above all else. Not to protect anyone from discomfort at your own expense. Not to minimize your needs to maintain harmony. Harmony that requires self-erasure is not harmony. You know this now. Silence taught you that lesson gently but firmly. If love is acknowledged, receive it without immediately attaching future expectations. Let it exist as truth in the present. Truth does not require projection. It stands on its own. If boundaries need to be discussed, approach them without defensiveness. Boundaries are not barriers. They are clarity in action. And if the revelation is quieter than expected, trust that too. Not every truth arrives with fireworks. Some arrive like a deep exhale. A settling. A sense of rightness that doesn't need witnesses. That kind of truth often has the longest lifespan. You are not here to relive old patterns. You are here to embody new ones. Patterns rooted in mutual respect, emotional responsibility, and self-awareness. Those patterns cannot form in secrecy forever. They require light. And light is beginning to enter the space that silence once held. Stay attentive to how you feel rather than what you think you should feel. Emotional honesty with yourself is your anchor now. It will prevent you from romanticizing what doesn't align or dismissing what does. This chapter is not about proving anything. Not to them. Not to yourself. It is about allowing reality to reveal itself without resistance. Resistance is no longer necessary. You are capable of meeting whatever comes with steadiness. Silence refined you. It stripped away illusions. It taught you how to hold love without losing your center. Now clarity arrives not as a disruption, but as a continuation of that growth. A natural next step. You don't need to rush toward conclusions. You don't need to retreat into distance. You only need to remain present. Present with your body. Present with your intuition. Present with your truth. Whatever is revealed will meet you where you stand. And where you stand now is grounded, self-aware, and whole. That is not an accident. That is preparation fulfilled. There is a final understanding that settles into you now, and it doesn't arrive as excitement or fear. It arrives as acceptance. Not resignation. Acceptance rooted in strength. You finally see that this entire journey was never meant to rush toward a specific ending. It was meant to shape how you stand in truth. And that work is complete. You are no longer trying to read between lines. You are no longer scanning moments for hidden meaning. That phase has ended. Not because meaning disappeared, but because you no longer need to hunt for it. What is real no longer hides from you. It meets you openly, or it falls away quietly. Both outcomes feel clean now. Clear. Honest. They sense this too. When someone stops searching for confirmation, it changes the emotional field completely. The pressure lifts. The uncertainty loses its grip. And suddenly, what once felt impossible to say feels necessary. Silence that was once protective begins to feel heavy, even dishonest. That is when truth naturally rises, not forced, not demanded, but inevitable. If they speak now, it will not be to test you. It will not be to secure reassurance. It will be because carrying the truth alone no longer aligns with who they have become. Growth does that. It makes hiding feel smaller than honesty. It makes restraint feel heavier than risk. And you will not receive their truth with trembling hands. You will receive it with grounded awareness. You will listen fully. You will feel fully. But you will not lose yourself in the process. That is the difference between who you were and who you are now. You have learned something rare. How to love without attachment to outcome. How to care without self-sacrifice. How to wait without abandoning your own life. These lessons did not weaken you. They fortified you. They prepared you to meet reality without distortion. If love is confirmed, you will not rush to rewrite your future in your head. You will stay present. You will allow connection to unfold at a pace that honors mutual readiness. You will no longer accept vagueness where clarity is possible. You will no longer accept silence where responsibility is required. That doesn't make you demanding. It makes you aligned. And if the truth comes in a form that closes a chapter rather than opens one, you will still stand tall. Because closure given honestly is not loss. It is freedom. It releases energy that was tied to waiting. It returns focus to your own becoming. And you are deeply connected to that now. There is no version of this story where you end up diminished. That outcome is no longer available. Silence may have delayed clarity, but it did not erase your worth. It refined it. It taught you discernment. It taught you patience without self-erasure. It taught you how to remain soft without becoming small. You no longer need signs. You no longer need reassurance from outside yourself. You recognize alignment by how it feels in your body. Calm. Open. Grounded. You recognize misalignment by tension, confusion, contraction. This awareness will guide you far beyond this connection. What God is revealing is not just their feelings. It is your strength. Your readiness. Your ability to hold truth without collapsing into fear or fantasy. This revelation is as much about you as it is about them. You were never meant to chase love. You were meant to become someone who could meet it honestly. That has happened. The waiting did its work. The silence did its work. And now, whatever is spoken will land in a space that is stable enough to receive it. There is peace here. Not because everything is resolved, but because you trust yourself to navigate whatever comes next. That trust is unshakable. And it is the greatest gift this journey gave you. This is the end of waiting. Not because everything is decided, but because you are no longer paused. You are present. You are whole. And you are ready.